new day and back from the machine shop with another beautifully finished manifold. Have a look at that. There's a couple of low spots that they weren't able to fix up, like that one over there and down the bottom over here, but that won't matter. That's a result of trying to surface this previously using a linisher, because what happens with a linisher is it tends to exaggerate the ends because it's very hard to hold the surface, the actual manifold, flat on a linisher, so you roll over the edges a little bit and it doesn't really help. So that's definitely flat now, so I'm going to pop that back in. I'm just going to clean up the head surface a little bit in here, replace that gasket, and yeah, I should be able to put that back in. I've already blocked that, so that should be pretty flat. So yeah, I'll put this bung back in there now. Now, interesting observation. I've just taken the plugs out of the driver's side head, and if you look closer, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but that's the one from the back, which is cylinder 8. It's completely black on the tip, so it hasn't been firing at all, whereas the other 3 have. So these are all used plugs out of the wife's car that are 175,000 Ks old, that I've only put in this engine because they're a matching set. So I need to now troubleshoot whether the plug's no good, my wiring to that rear coil might be no good, the coil itself may be no good. There's a bunch of different things that I need to check. It may just be that the actual lead wasn't on properly, because that one I had to lift it slightly so it would clear the booster. So a bunch of troubleshooting will need to be done back there to see if I can work out why that is. But it's something I will need to look at. So I'm going to change those plugs over now and keep going. So while assembling this, I try and take special care to make sure that wherever I put an object still allows for relatively easy servicing. And in most cases I think I've done that. Like typical items like your spark plugs and leads, I can get to all of those without having to remove anything. If I did need more, the dump pipe is removable here. Like I can't show it now, but there's a V-band that goes over this side as well to allow that piece of pipe to be removed to allow even easier servicing. It isn't necessary, I can still reach underneath it and do the job, but everything's been really easy to work on, with the exception of this bloody dipstick tube. I've just spent a good part of an hour trying to get that dipstick tube down that hole along the side of the block and into the hole into the side of the block where it actually plugs into. There is so much shit in the way down there that I just didn't consider. I've got starter motor, which will be typical for anybody, starter motor heat shield, engine mount, wiring harness, knock sensor, steering column. There's everything down there that is so close. So I had to get underneath the car and remove a lot of that stuff just so I could feed that dipstick back into its hole. But it's done now. It's in. It's reading correctly, so it's gone the right way. Everything's happy. I've just I've torqued up the intake exhaust manifold as well and put the spark plugs in. I'm just going to get a little bit of whatever that electric goo is and put some new spark plug leads in there. And then I can move on to putting the crossover pipe in underneath. Actually, no, I might do the crossover pipe first before I come into the leads and stuff, but I'll do that next and I can get the radiator back in. So to show just how out of shape this flange is, focus, I haven't cleaned any of the soot off. I've just started hitting it with the knife block, and you can see, like, I'm going in a consistent motion. It's just hitting the outside here and over here, so there's heaps to come down on that. That was professionally welded. I didn't actually do this one, but it shows just how easily these things warp, and yeah, how much care you need to take to make sure you get them right again. So I'll keep sort of filing away until it's nice. Okay, I've already got it miles better, but there's still some low spots which I think are going to be hard to see. I'll see if I can highlight them with a texter. A low here. Good focusing, yep. And there's another spot here. It's very hard to tell, but you can sort of see the grain from the file is different. So it's nice and smooth here. It's not so much there. So it needs a little bit more before I'll be satisfied, so I'm going to keep going at that. Alright, I'm happy with that, and that'll do for tonight. Pretty hard to focus on this, but you can see it's pretty consistent with the scratching, which is an indication it's pretty flat. This one here's the next one. I think I'll leave this one till tomorrow. My arms are pretty sore from working away at that flange, so geez, focus a little bit. Yeah, that'll do for now. Yeah, I'll be back at it in the morning. Right, back at it this morning. I've just hit this flange here. This one was pretty good. It didn't take much. I went over it with the Sharpie just to make sure it was all smooth, and yeah, I'm happy with that result. So those two are looking good now. I'm happy enough that they should almost seal. So now I'm going to struggle and try and get it back in the car. I've also got to try and nip these V-band clamps in a little bit, so I actually clamp on the chamfered surfaces a little bit. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, I'll do that next. Alright, that's done. I didn't film while I was doing it, but I'll summarise what I did. I always try and keep round things around, like old bearing cups and old bearing retainers and bits of tube, so I can use the press for more, to make it more versatile basically. So I don't have any actual cups, proper cups for this. So these two here became the exact size that I needed to bend the edges of that V-band clamp in a little bit. I couldn't get the vice grips in to do it, so this did the job for that. I also used a little bit of this just on the surfaces, just a hair, just on the finger and around, just to smooth out any imperfections. And I used a bit of this inside the clamp itself, where the clamp rubs against the tapered surface of the flange. And I think that's done a good job. It seems to be central. It seems to be clamped up nice and tight. So hopefully that'll work. We'll give it a go soon. Alrighty. So crossover pipes all in. I've just moved that clamp around a little bit. That's the hose clamp, just because it was really close to the drain on this side. And I found another one of these pulleys that was in better condition than mine, so I just quickly swapped that over as well. Took the belt off, put it back on again. The next part that I've got to do that I'd forgotten about is I need to cut that hole out, because the compressor housing is bigger with that 4.2 inch V-band adapter. So I've marked roughly where I want it, but I don't want to cut it with this here. So I'm going to take the CHRA out again, just pop that out of the way, and then I should be able to just buzz around that with a saw real quick. So that's next, doing it now. Okay, that's done. Just put a new bit of pinch weld on there. Well, not a new bit, I moved the bit from there because I can't find my spool of it, but I'll change that later. So that's cut out. I just masked that with a bit of tape, and there's the extra piece that's come out. So if my measurements are worth a shit, that should do the job now, but I won't know until my my V-band adapter comes. But I can put the turbo back in there at least anyway, so that's what's next. Well, that looked like it worked out okay. The hole's obviously a lot bigger, but there's still the clamp that's got to go around there that I don't want to hit anywhere. So I think it's going to work out perfectly. It lines up with my dot that I put on there earlier, so I think we're good. I think that's going to work out quite well. Let me do a little demonstration on why working on cars and putting things where they don't belong is so much fun. The old Play-Doh trick. Bonnet. Closed. Good. Level. Fine. Pull. Fuck it. Okay, I've got clearance again now. I just took to it with a hammer. I haven't cut anything, I've just bent it up. It was all going so well until I just nipped the bonnet a little bit, which I don't think it's going to be visible anywhere. But there's a tiny little ding, but it doesn't matter. So, yeah, that clears now. I've got about 6 mil. So what I'll do as well is I'll wind out these little stops a tiny little bit. Give me a couple more, but that's going to have to do it. It's amazing how this shit happens. I had 10 mil before. I had it in a little gasket, and now I don't have any. So something between the combination of that and having that manifold skimmed has brought that up about 10 mil. Which is obvious here as well, because I've got heaps of room for the exhaust now as well, which is really good, but yeah, also bad. Either way, it's done, it clears, I'm happy with it, it'll do, moving on. Okay, moving right along. I've just bent the bracket on that. It's subtle, but it's enough, and I just tested the pipe on there. I'll do another video shortly with that, but it clears. The wire doesn't even touch it anymore. Radiator's back in, just got to put the hoses back in. I changed these bolts because they were too shiny, and it was ruining the aesthetics of this car. So I've got some rusty shit ones in there now. It's good to see the clearance here hasn't changed, because that would have been a problem. But I can't get my finger down there, but it's not going to get any closer, so it should be right. And the hose sort of stops here. So that's okay. Still got a beanie to go in there. I'll get those hoses all clamped up and yeah, moving on. Alright, got a bit more stuff back in now. All the cold sides in, all the radiators in. I've filled the radiator. My pressure tester doesn't seem to fit that bottle, so that makes it hard to pressure test it, but let's assume it's fine. All the clamps, I believe, are all done up. I've just checked the fuel, make sure it's not leaking. It's building pressure, so that looks good. So I think it might be time to start it up. Alright, EFI Live is all connected, ready to go. Let's give this a crank and see what she does. Pop. That was a success. I ran it up to fan 1 temperature, which is 98 degrees Celsius, and the fan brought it back down to 94 pretty much straight away. It's still smoking off because there's oil and grease all over everything, but it's holding pressure in the cooling system. It seems to idle pretty well. It did stall once after a rev, but that's okay. It hasn't been tuned yet, so it's just base numbers, so I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah. I still didn't get the wideband plugged in for that, so I don't know what the fueling was like, but yeah. But hey, I'm happy it runs. It's all good. The cooling system's still on its thing over here. So you can see it's still venting out some air pockets, but it's working. It's good. I still don't have the cluster. My father's still working on the cluster, so without the cluster, I don't have alternator charge. So I'm going to have to put this back on the battery charger overnight because the battery voltage is down to 11.6. But yeah, it's all working beautifully, and I'm pretty happy with that. I might just do an upload tonight on a nice quick video, and yeah, see you all next time. Like and subscribe. Thanks.